made quite a discovery off Nantucket Island in Massachusetts, the wreck of a German U-boat.
Mysteriously vanished at the height of World War II, fleeing a Nazi invasion. And now archaeologists have made a fascinating discovery.
In the frozen depths of the North Atlantic, nearly 75 years after the guns of the Second World War fell silent, a ghost stirred. The discovery came not from a human diver, but from a sleek, autonomous underwater drone, a marvel of modern engineering designed to chart the ocean floor and uncover wrecks long lost to history. It was during a routine exploration mission off the coast of Norway that the drone's sonar detected an unnatural shape embedded in the silt. As its cameras glided closer, beams of artificial light illuminated the twisted hull of a German U-boat. The faint outline of the Iron Cross on the conning tower left no doubt. This was a Nazi submarine, one of hundreds lost during the Battle of the Atlantic. But what lay inside this particular wreck would send a chill through the entire world. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. The drone, operated remotely from a vessel above, maneuvered its way through the corroded hatches and into the dark claustrophobic corridors of the sunken craft. Its cameras revealed scenes frozen in time, the skeletal remains of the crew, their personal effects scattered across the floor, the rusted control panels still marked with faded German inscriptions. Yet, as the operators watched the live feed, something about this wreck was different. Most U-boats had been scuttled, destroyed, or found empty after the war. This one appeared unnaturally intact, as if preserved deliberately. The deeper the drone ventured, the more eerie the discovery became. In one compartment, sealed behind a reinforced steel door, the drone's manipulator arm found a set of containers, large metallic cylinders with intricate markings. These weren't standard-issue torpedoes or munitions. Each was stamped with strange alphanumeric codes and the insignia of a secret division within the Third Reich, known from declassified archives as the Anomalous. This was the Nazi research branch that obsessed over the occult, ancient relics, and forbidden science. The containers had been hidden deep in the submarine storage bay, suggesting that whatever was inside had been meant to remain secret, even from most of the crew. When the drone's sensors scanned the cylinders, it detected traces of radiation. The operators froze. These readings were inconsistent with conventional weaponry. Radiation this strong, even after decades underwater, indicated that the contents had once been extraordinarily potent. The team realized they were staring at something that might predate the atomic age, or perhaps represented an early Nazi experiment in nuclear materials. The idea that Nazi Germany had not only attempted to develop nuclear technology, but had secretly transported experimental cores across the Atlantic suddenly became more plausible. Historical records had long hinted at a mysterious U-boat that vanished in 1945, while supposedly carrying special cargo bound for South America. Many believed it was a myth, but now, staring at the live feed, the myth had materialized. The discovery raised immediate questions. Why would a submarine from the final days of the war be transporting radioactive materials in sealed containers? Where was it heading, and who ordered this mission? Nazi Germany's defeat was imminent by 1945, yet the regime continued to move assets, gold, and personnel in desperate attempts to preserve its secrets. Some historians had speculated that Hitler's inner circle planned an escape or the continuation of their ideology abroad. If these containers were linked to that plan, they might represent an effort to transfer advanced technology, or something far darker, to a hidden base or sympathetic regime overseas. As the drone's cameras zoomed in on the markings, experts later identified the insignia of U-7456, a submarine that had been officially listed as missing in action since April 1945. No wreck had ever been found, no crew recovered, and its final transmission had been abruptly cut off near the Norwegian Sea. The vessel had been assigned to a classified operation under Admiral Karl Donitz, the commander of the U-boat fleet and, briefly, Hitler's successor. Its mission logs, uncovered decades later, were heavily redacted but made reference to Der Sonnenaufgang, the sunrise. What this term meant had remained speculative, but the discovery of the submarine now offered the first tangible clue. Inside the captain's quarters, the drone found something even more chilling. Resting on the desk, protected by a glass casing, was a small metal device no larger than a briefcase. It bore the same insignia as the cylinders, but also a symbol long associated with the Thule Society, a secret organization that heavily influenced Nazi ideology. The device was still connected by corroded wires to what appeared to be a battery pack. This was no standard communication tool or navigation aid. Some analysts believe it might have been a prototype for a compact energy generator or an experimental weapon. Whatever it was, its design suggested technology decades ahead of its time. When the footage of the interior was released to scientific experts under confidentiality agreements, theories exploded. Some speculated that the Nazis had been experimenting with zero-point energy, the idea of extracting limitless power from the vacuum of space. Others connected it to the D-Glock legend, a rumored Nazi device capable of manipulating gravity and time itself. These ideas had long belonged to the fringe of historical speculation. But now, tangible evidence seemed to emerge from the depths. The symmetry of the device, the precision of its craftsmanship, and the fact that it had remained uncorroded after 70 years underwater all defied easy explanation. The implications of this discovery went far beyond archaeology. If the Nazis had truly been developing a new form of energy or weaponry, it meant that the technological race of the 20th century had deeper and darker roots than previously understood. The submarine's cargo could represent a missing link between early atomic research and post-war advancements. Many of the scientists who had worked for the Third Reich were later absorbed into Allied research programs under Operation Paperclip. Some of them had cryptic records of experiments in electromagnetic propulsion and materials science that modern physicists still struggle to fully interpret. Perhaps this submarine had been carrying the physical evidence of those experiments, evidence meant to reach South America or an undisclosed facility for continuation after the Reich's collapse. Yet beyond the scientific intrigue lay something far more disturbing. Among the papers scattered around the control room, the drone's cameras captured handwritten notes in German. Translated later, they revealed fragments of a logbook kept by the commanding officer. The entries began as routine: course directions, weather conditions, and coded transmissions. But as the submarine approached the point of disappearance, the tone changed. The captain wrote of strange noises from below deck, a pulse that makes the instruments flicker, and light that moves as if alive. His final entry, barely legible, read, "It is awake." After that, the log ended abruptly. When analyzed, the ship's power systems appeared to have been altered from standard U-boat designs. Some of the wiring led to the sealed compartment where the cylinders and device were found, suggesting that the submarine itself might have been used as a test bed for whatever experiment was underway. The radiation levels, the magnetic anomalies, and the unexplained preservation of certain metal parts all pointed to a phenomenon that conventional science could not easily classify. The water around the wreck, even after decades, showed trace electromagnetic irregularities, as if the submarine continued to emit a faint, invisible pulse. This revelation caused alarm among the marine engineers overseeing the expedition. Could there still be residual energy stored within the device? If disturbed, could it trigger a reaction? The decision was made to halt any attempt at retrieval. The underwater drone was instructed to back away, but as it did, the feed briefly flickered. For several seconds, the signal transmitted an image of the interior illuminated by an unnatural bluish glow, emanating from within the sealed compartment. The light seemed to pulse rhythmically, as though responding to the drone's presence. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. When the feed stabilized, the submarine lay dark and silent once again. Experts reviewing the footage could not determine whether the glow was an artifact of interference or something real. The possibility that an unknown energy source remained active inside the wreck was deeply unsettling. Even a small residual charge from an experimental reactor could have catastrophic consequences if mishandled. Some urged immediate recovery. Others warned against it, fearing contamination or worse. Ultimately, the decision was made to classify the coordinates and suspend all further dives until more data could be gathered remotely. The footage, however, leaked, and what the public saw ignited a global wave of speculation. Historians, scientists, and conspiracy theorists all seized on the revelation. To some, it proved that the Nazis had come closer to developing revolutionary technology than anyone had believed. To others, it hinted at something beyond science, the possibility that the submarine had been carrying an object of otherworldly origin. The Third Reich's fascination with ancient myths, lost civilizations, and supposed alien technology had long been dismissed as ideological delusion, but this discovery reopened every forbidden question. Could U-7456 have been transporting not just human-made materials, but something discovered, something unearthed that should have remained buried? The sealed containers, when studied through the drone's imaging, revealed that they were reinforced not just with steel, but with an alloy unknown to current metallurgy databases. Even the corrosion patterns were inconsistent with ocean exposure. Some surfaces reflected light in ways that suggested non-terrestrial composition. The possibility that the Nazis had somehow obtained materials from a meteorite or had discovered a site containing anomalous elements became a serious line of inquiry. Their obsession with the occult and the Aryan origin from the star's mythology suddenly seemed less like madness and more like an attempt to harness something that terrified them as much as it fascinated them. The drone's discovery also reignited debate about secret Nazi bases rumored to exist beneath the Antarctic ice. Some researchers suggested that the submarine's intended destination might have been such a base, a final redoubt where technology and ideology could be preserved for the future. Declassified Allied intelligence reports mentioned several submarines that disappeared heading south in the final months of the war. Most were presumed lost, but none were ever found. If U-7456 was part of that fleet, it could mean others still lie hidden, carrying similar cargo, untouched and waiting. Marine archaeologists found themselves caught between awe and dread. The wreck's preservation meant they were looking at a perfect time capsule, yet its contents defied explanation. The presence of residual energy, the unexplained light, and the unreadable inscriptions inside the submarine all suggested that the discovery was far more than historical. The question became not just what the Nazis were doing, but whether the experiment had truly ended. If the faint electromagnetic pulses still emanating from the wreck were indeed real, they could be a signal. Or worse, a reaction continuing autonomously after all these decades. Those involved in the mission reported experiencing odd phenomena as they studied the live feed. Instruments on the research vessel behaved erratically when near the coordinates. Compass readings drifted several degrees, and electronic equipment sometimes failed without cause. One operator described feeling a vibration in the chest whenever the drone approached the sealed compartment, as if the entire seabed hummed at a frequency just below hearing. None of these effects were observed in nearby areas, leading the team to believe they were directly linked to the wreck itself. Even the ocean currents around the site appeared subtly distorted, forming circular patterns that persisted for hours before dissipating. When the video was later analyzed frame by frame, a brief sequence showed something impossible. As the drone's light swept across the compartment containing the cylinders, the reflection appeared to shift independently of the camera angle. For a fraction of a second, it formed a distinct shape, almost human, but stretched, elongated, and luminous. Some dismissed it as a trick of refraction, others were not so sure. Whatever the cause, it deepened the sense that the submarine was not merely a relic, but a container for something alive in a way that defied biological understanding. Governments became quietly involved. The coordinates were restricted, satellite imagery of the region was blurred, and the research vessel's data was confiscated. Unofficial sources claimed that a multinational task force was formed to study the wreck remotely, using deep-sea sensors and classified technology. Yet even those systems began to malfunction in proximity to the site. Data packets returned scrambled, and signal loss occurred at consistent intervals, as though something was actively interfering with observation. It became clear that human presence near the submarine was being resisted by an unknown force. What made the discovery so haunting was not simply what was found, but the implications of its existence. The Nazis had been obsessed with mastering both the physical and metaphysical worlds, seeking power through science and ritual alike. If the contents of U-7456 represented an intersection of those pursuits, an experiment merging technology and the unknown, then humanity stood on the edge of uncovering something that could redefine both history and reality. The fear was not only of what might be learned, but of what might awaken once again if the submarine were disturbed. The wreck's surroundings, when mapped in detail, showed patterns in the seabed resembling geometric symbols. They appeared carved or burned into the silt, too symmetrical to be natural. The shapes corresponded to ancient runes associated with Norse mythology, symbols that the Nazis had co-opted into their own mystic symbology. Their presence on the ocean floor hinted that the submarine might have activated something before sinking, perhaps an experiment in electromagnetic resonance, or something far older. Even the surrounding marine life was scarce, as though the ocean itself avoided the area. Sonar readings indicated an unusual acoustic void, a region where sound behaved unpredictably, echoing in impossible ways. The sea above the wreck remained deceptively calm, its rippling surface betraying nothing of the enigma that slept beneath. On board the research vessel, the crew could not shake the sensation that they had stumbled upon something meant never to be found. Despite orders to suspend operations, curiosity gnawed at them. Even as night fell over the Norwegian Sea, a faint unease lingered. Instruments continued to show irregular readings, subtle shifts in magnetic north that pulsed in rhythm with the ocean's swell. Some of the scientists tried to rationalize it as a geological anomaly, but deep down, they knew that nature did not hum in perfect intervals. It was as if the sea itself was keeping time with the heartbeat of the sunken machine below. In the following days, the team reviewed every second of the drone's footage. Each frame seemed to reveal new details that had been overlooked. Patterns etched into the submarine's interior, geometric sequences on the walls of the sealed compartment, and faint inscriptions along the pipes that didn't match any known German engineering standards. These weren't random scrawls of a desperate crew. They formed a deliberate design. The curves and angles mirrored those found in ancient symbology used by secret societies across Europe. A linguist among the team identified fragments that corresponded to runic symbols associated with power, transformation, and gateways. It dawned on them that this was more than a vessel for transport. It was a chamber, a construct designed for containment or experimentation with forces beyond conventional physics. As word of the find circulated within classified circles, more experts were quietly brought in. One of them, a physicist known for his work on electromagnetic field theory, was struck by the layout of the submarine's wiring and compartmentalized structure. It seemed to follow an architecture designed to amplify resonance, as though the entire submarine acted as a conductor for energy. He theorized that the strange hum and the persistent electromagnetic disturbances were not remnants of any engine system, but an unintended byproduct of whatever had been sealed inside. The hull's composition, partially reinforced with alloys unrecorded in wartime production lists, further suggested that the engineers who built U-7456 were operating on classified directives separate from the Kriegsmarine's conventional command. Another discovery complicated matters further. A recovered fragment of one of the crew's uniforms bore a patch unlike any seen before, a black insignia marked with a golden spiral. After cross-referencing the image with declassified wartime archives, historians traced it to a clandestine research division under the SS, Sonderkommando 1000. This division had been tasked with unconventional physics, biological enhancement, and ancient cultural studies aimed at merging technology with mysticism. The last known record of their activity placed them in Poland in 1944, before they abruptly disappeared from all reports. The resurfacing of their emblem inside the submarine confirmed a horrifying possibility. The operation of U-7456 might have been one of their final undertakings. Inside one of the drone's images, faint behind a layer of corrosion on the bulkhead, there was an image painted directly onto the metal, a crude diagram of concentric circles, intersected by angular lines converging on a central point. Experts recognized the shape immediately. It resembled the Black Sun symbol, a secret emblem used within high-ranking Nazi occult circles to represent infinite power and eternal return. But in this version, an additional outer ring had been added, one that appeared incomplete, as if the artist or engineer had run out of time before finishing it. This detail unsettled everyone who studied it. What if the missing piece was intentional? An acknowledgement that the design itself was too dangerous to complete? Speculation soon turned into tension. Governments wanted control, scientists wanted answers, and the sea seemed unwilling to yield its secrets. Satellite data of the area revealed subtle changes in the ocean's temperature pattern, a gradual warming localized precisely above the wreck site. It wasn't enough to raise alarms in global climate models, but for those monitoring it closely, it was undeniable. Something below was radiating heat, steady, consistent, unnatural. That same heat signature pulsed in synchrony with the electromagnetic anomalies recorded days earlier. The readings aligned perfectly with the drone's final transmission, the moment when the blue light had flared deep within the submarine. The question no one could answer was simple yet terrifying. How could a machine submerged in near freezing water for nearly 8 decades still be active? Weeks later, under heavy secrecy, another drone was deployed. This one shielded against radiation and interference. The mission was simple. Gather precise measurements, no closer than 50 meters from the wreck. The descent went smoothly until the drone reached the designated depth. Then, without warning, its cameras distorted. The video feed filled with static, followed by a brief flash of light. When the picture returned, the submarine appeared slightly shifted, as though its orientation on the seabed had changed. Yet no seismic activity or undersea current could explain such movement. The operator checked and rechecked coordinates, certain of error, but the sonar outline confirmed the impossible. U-7456 had rotated a few degrees. Not much, but enough to defy logic. It was as though the submarine had stirred. In the days that followed, subtle shifts continued. The next scan revealed a faint vibration pattern emanating outward in perfect radial waves. The crew on the surface could feel none of it physically, but their instruments recorded tremors with mathematical precision. They seemed to form a sequence, a code, perhaps a form of transmission. When analyzed by cryptologists, the pattern displayed characteristics similar to Morse, but with extra intervals, too complex for simple communication, too structured to be random. Some believed it was data, others thought it was a call, not for help, but for recognition. Parallel to these developments, historians revisited Nazi archives that had long been dismissed as myth. They found scattered references to a project codenamed Unterwelt, Underworld. The documents spoke vaguely of contact through resonance and awakening the deep power. Most historians had interpreted these as delusions born of wartime desperation, but in light of the submarine's discovery, the terminology took on a darker, literal meaning. What if the experiment wasn't about weaponry at all, but about reaching or invoking something? The Nazi obsession with ancient civilizations, particularly those that vanished without explanation, had been rooted in the belief that lost knowledge could restore human supremacy. The notion of awakening suggested that U-7456 might have been sent to test such theories, to communicate with something beneath the earth or the sea. The more that was uncovered, the clearer it became that the submarine was not merely a vessel but a ritual instrument. The combination of advanced engineering and arcane symbology pointed toward an attempt to merge technology and mysticism in a single act. This blending of science and the occult had always been a hallmark of the Nazi inner circle, but never before had such physical evidence been found. The containers, the device, the radiation, the resonance, all of it might have been components of an experiment intended to pierce the boundaries of what humanity understood as real. The psychological effects on the research crew grew more severe. Several reported vivid dreams involving dark corridors, mechanical rhythms, and voices speaking in distorted German. These dreams began shortly after exposure to the live sonar data from the wreck. None of the subjects had been inside the submarine or even near the sea. They had simply worked with the frequencies and footage, yet they described the same sensations: a humming sound, a low vibration, and the feeling of being watched from deep below. Psychologists brought in to examine them theorized that the frequencies emitted by the submarine might have an effect on the human brain, altering perception and emotion. But a few of the crew privately feared something worse: that the submarine's presence was sentient, aware of their attention, and somehow able to reach back through the very instruments they used to study it. More troubling still were the anomalies in the footage timeline. When engineers tried to synchronize timestamps between drones, they found that certain sections of the video appeared to overlap, showing the same moments twice from slightly different angles. The timestamps were consistent, yet the data was contradictory. Clocks aboard the vessel also began to drift subtly whenever the feed was active, losing seconds in some cases and gaining them in others. It seemed as if time itself bent faintly around the signals coming from below. The phenomenon defied every known model, leaving even seasoned scientists shaken. Some whispered of temporal distortion, others of dimensional interference, words that belonged more in fiction than in physics, and yet the evidence kept accumulating. The atmosphere on the ship thickened with dread. Even the ocean began to feel hostile. Marine life that once thrived around the area vanished completely. Sonar detected no schools of fish, no movement of whales or seals. The sea grew silent, as if emptied. When one of the crew dropped an acoustic sensor into the water, it recorded a constant low-frequency pulse beneath the normal ambient noise, the same beat that mirrored the submarine's magnetic rhythm. What unnerved them most was that the pulse never wavered. It was steady, deliberate, and alive. When the authorities finally ordered the operation shut down, it was too late to erase the psychological impact on those involved. Some crew members refused to speak about what they had seen. Others suffered nervous breakdowns. One technician, before disappearing from public view, claimed that during the final hours of observation, he saw something move inside the sealed compartment. A shadow, darker than the void around it, shifting with purpose. The footage from that moment was later found corrupted beyond recovery. Still, fragments of data remained. Within them lay a final enigma. A pattern extracted from the vibrations when translated into sound and slowed to audible frequency produced a tone that formed an eerie harmonic scale. When played through analysis software, that tone generated a visual waveform eerily similar to ancient sigils associated with summoning rituals. To some, this was coincidence. To others, it was proof that U-7456 had been more than an experiment. It had been an invocation. There are those who now believe that what the underwater drone discovered was not merely a technological artifact, but a boundary, a line between human understanding and something far older. The idea that human ambition, driven by obsession and cruelty, had tapped into forces it could not control resonated deeply in the halls of science and philosophy alike. The sea, always mysterious, had become a grave not just for men, but for forbidden knowledge. In time, stories began to circulate among those few who had access to the footage. Strange coincidences plagued their lives. Electrical malfunctions, vivid nightmares, and sensations of being drawn to the ocean without reason. Some claimed to hear the low hum even on land, vibrating faintly through walls, whispering just below the threshold of hearing. It became known among a small group of researchers as the signal, an echo of something waiting beneath the water. Despite the secrecy imposed by governments, rumors inevitably leaked. Theories multiplied that the submarine carried remnants of an ancient meteorite believed to hold sentient energy, that it contained a machine capable of bridging dimensions, that the Nazis had succeeded in awakening something and then, terrified by what they had done, tried to bury it beneath the sea. None of these could be proven, yet none could be entirely dismissed either. Too many anomalies, too many coincidences surrounded the wreck. Decades later, the coordinates remain classified, but those who monitor the ocean's magnetic field occasionally detect faint signatures from that same region. Rhythmic pulses that repeat every few months like a heartbeat. No vessel dares to approach closely anymore. Even autonomous drones have been lost to sudden system failures in proximity to the site. To the outside world, U-7456 is just another forgotten wreck, a relic of a war long over. But to those who know the truth, it is something else entirely. A sleeping engine of unknown origin, humming quietly in the dark. There are no monuments for the men who served aboard that submarine. Their fate remains as obscure as the purpose of their mission. Perhaps they died before realizing the enormity of what they carried. Perhaps they sealed themselves inside to prevent it from escaping. The ocean, indifferent as ever, keeps their secret. Yet the hum persists, faint but unyielding, defying time, pressure, and decay. And so the wreck endures. A rusted coffin, a relic of madness, a testament to human arrogance. Deep below the freezing waters, U-7456 continues to pulse with the quiet rhythm of something that refuses to die. Whether it is machine, energy, or entity, no one can say. But those who have studied its echo, those who have heard the recordings of its sound, Never forget it. They describe it as a frequency that vibrates not only in the ear, but in the bones. A resonance that stirs something primal, something ancient, as if the ocean itself remembers. There are whispers that in rare moments, when the sea is still and the sky is clear, ships passing over that area experience interference in their navigation systems. Compasses spin wildly, communications cut off, and for a few moments the water below seems to shimmer as though light were bending beneath the surface. Then it stops, and everything returns to normal. The captains write it off as magnetic disturbance, but the log entries echo the same phrase again and again. The sea is restless there. No recovery team has returned since the final classified mission. The drones that venture too close lose signal, vanishing into the abyss. The last confirmed image, taken years after the initial discovery, shows the submarine as it always was, lying silent on the seabed surrounded by shadow. Yet in that image, just beneath the faint beam of artificial light, something glimmers. A reflection, circular and deliberate, like an eye opening in the dark. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us? What are your thoughts on the underwater drone's terrifying Nazi submarine find? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.